Welcome to Weencast, Weencaps, The 100, Season 2, the Blood Must Have Blood season. I am your Ween. The show returns this season with 16 episodes instead of 13, and the episode per season count will bounce between these two numbers throughout the rest of the run of the show. Baseline season plot. This season, we find the majority of our heroes in the clutches of the Mountain Men, whom all the Grounders fear. The Mountain Men are in fact the inhabitants of the Mount Weather bunker facility, survivors of the nuclear war who have been completely insulated from the harshness of the world outside and live a much more comfortable and familiar lifestyle to both us the viewers and to the people of the Ark. Mount Weather seems like a great place to live. I'm sure our heroes will be very comfortable here. No dark secrets or nothing. The survivors from the Ark who haven't been captured by Mount Weather are trying to establish their own settlement on the Earth's surface while not repeating the mistakes of last season, that is, antagonizing the people who already live in the region unto the point of vicious warfare. They've built the settlement, which they call Camp Jaha, on the site where one of the substations crashed, so they can use the surviving structure of the station for temporary housing and storage. Also, so they can keep reusing the sets of the Ark. Themes of this season include, once again, the price of survival, the worthiness of corrupt civilizations to survive, the ethics of medical experimentation, and the horrors of the extraction of human product. Content warning: there will be, as always, discussion of violence, gore, death, murder, as well as, in particular for this season, drug addiction and graphic medical abuse and experimentation, and a little bit of sex. And, once again, full spoilers for the whole run of the 100. Main character catch-up. Let's catch up with our main characters. Where did we leave them at the end of Season 1? Where are they going now at the beginning of Season 2? Clark begins this season as a guest of Mount Weather, but unlike Jasper, Monty, and her other friends, Clark is immediately suspicious of the Mount Weatherites' hospitality. It comes off a little crazy to the others, but remember, it's not actually paranoia if someone's really out to get you. Bellamy, surprise, surprise, is not dead. He and Finn were not immolated by the rocket jets last season and are loose in the woods, with no idea what happened to the rest of the 100. Octavia, swept away by Lincoln at the end of last season, is still suffering from the wounds she accrued in the final battle at the dropship, even as she and Lincoln begin fleeing east to find his friend Luna, who lives by the sea, to take shelter with her and her more friendly tribe of Grounders. Which brings us to Lincoln, who made it to the main credits this season, but he's in a rough spot because he's very worried about the wounded Octavia and is afraid that she's going to die before he can bring her to Luna. Finn, like Bellamy, is lost in the woods, trying to find literally anybody he knows. He's also going through a lot emotionally. His nice guy facade is crumbling and someone new is emerging. Raven has made it to the main credits too, yay! And she's in really bad shape from being shot by Murphy last season. The Mountain Men did not take her with the other teens because they thought she was dead, so she's stuck in the dropship, slowly dying since she can't walk and can't doctor herself. Jasper and Monty are in Mount Weather too, and Jasper, for one, is loving it. There's food, there's fun, and best of all, there's a girl who actually likes him. So, guess how that's going to end for him. Monty's there as well, and he's not as pilled about it as Jasper, and he's also pretty worried about Clark's increasing paranoia. As for the adults, Abby and Kane are now on the ground. Abby has a lot to do as potentially the most skilled doctor alive on Earth, and she's also, unsurprisingly, very worried about her missing daughter. And Kane, in a shocking reversal from last season, is the new and fairly well-liked Chancellor of Camp Jaha, and he's trying his level best to lead the people of the Ark to a peaceful, stable future. So you know how that's going to end for him. And Jaha, poor Jaha, stuck up in space. Guess he'll spend the whole season dying slowly. Certainly, there's no improbable way for him to reach the ground somehow, right? Recurring character roundup. First, and most importantly, it's Murphy. Yes, the bitch is back. Murphy has survived once again, but you'll be shocked to hear he doesn't feel exactly comfortable at Camp Jaha, a settlement named after the man who killed his dad, populated almost exclusively by people whom he has tried to kill at least once. Luckily, he and an unlikely companion are going to set out on a magical adventure together. Inside the mountain, there's a number of new recurring characters. Maya Vi, played by Eve Harlow, is a nice teen girl living in Mount Weather who forms a connection with Jasper. They have a sweet relationship, and she helps him when the Mount Weatherites turn on our heroes for reasons we'll get into later. So, it's gonna go great for her. Dante Wallace, played by Raymond J. Barry, is the president of Mount Weather, and I don't say president lightly. One of my favorite things about Mount Weather is that it is stuffed full of the art treasures of the Western world, which are preserved down in the vaults and are displayed all around the Mount Weather sets, like Starry Night in Clark's cell at the end of last season, and Dante Wallace's office, a glass cube emblazoned with the logo of the Department of Homeland Security everywhere, is filled with the ephemera of the American presidency. That sad JFK portrait, Washington crossing the Delaware, bust of Lincoln, etc., etc. I love this, obviously. Dante takes his role as shepherd of the last remaining bastion of legitimate humanity very seriously. He utters this immortal adage on leadership, "I bear it so my people don't have to." This will be important later. Dante also has a son named Cage Wallace, played by Johnny Whitworth. Cage is Dante's son and the presumptive future president because the Mount Weather bunker is not super big on elections. Cage oversees Mount Weather's various defensive mechanisms, some of which are troubling in their ethical implications. For example, remember that killer green fog from last season? It's called acid fog, and Cage controls it. I don't really know what Dante expected other than to have an evil son when he named that son Cage. Cage is assisted in his villainy by Dr. Lorelei Singh, played by the prolific Rekha Sharma. Singh is the head medical scientist of Mount Weather, and she's charged with maintaining everyone's health in the face of the dangerous, and it turns out, actually quite irradiated world above. And let's just say she does not adhere very faithfully to the Hippocratic Oath. There's also a guardsman named Carl Emerson, played by Toby Levin. He's a guard on Mount Weather, and he's loyal to Cage Wallace specifically and the mission of protecting everyone in Mount Weather. Among the Grounders, we have a number of new characters as well. Indra, played by Adina Porter, a leader of Tree Crew. Indra is a brave and intelligent warrior who is from the same village as Lincoln and his friend Nico the Healer. Her sense of loyalty and moral fiber are severely challenged by all the things that you would expect from this show, as well as a number of things that you won't expect. We also get in this season the famous Lexa, played by Alicia Debnam Carey. She's the ruthless and uncompromising teen commander of the Grounders. While she's from Tree Crew originally, Lexa is the leader of all 12 nearby Grounder tribes and must carefully balance their needs and demands while not seeming to prioritize her own people's interests. Anya, the leader of the Grounders who attacked the teens last season, is also back. Trust me, her defeat and capture at the hands of Clark has brought her quite low. She's in Mount Weather somewhere too, but it isn't the same part as Clark and the other ARC teens. We also meet Nico, played by Ty Olson, who is Lincoln's close friend and Tree Crew's healer. Like Indra, he's a respected figure in Lincoln's hometown. Echo, played by Tasha Tellis, who is a Grounder from the Ice Nation far in the north. Echo only appears briefly in a few critical scenes with Bellamy, but her future import in the show cannot be overstated. Similarly, we meet Emori, played by Luisa de Oliveira, who is another Grounder with an important future. Emori is a reject who lives out in the desert with her brother, because both of them have visible mutations, which are considered a eugenics issue by the other Grounders. She's named Emori because of the word memorial and how often it recurs around Washington, D.C. And for our ARC friends, we have Kyle Wick, played by Steve Talley. Yes, it's Wick the engineer again. Yes, I find him hideously annoying. He has a shitty blonde mustache. He talks a lot. Yes, he's Raven's new love interest. Yes, she never gets any good boyfriend characters. Actually, there are very few good boyfriend characters on this show. But you know who is back that I do love? Jackson. Jackson continues to assist Abby with doctoring and shit, but he actually does get to do a few real things in this season, and he plays a small but helpful role in the season finale. Harper's also here. She's in Mount Weather, and so she's often in group scenes with Monty, Jasper, and the others. She gets into some trouble while they're there. And last but not least, it's my favorite recurring sub-recurring segment, Miller time. Nathan Miller. How are you doing, bud? Not super great, it turns out. He's in Mount Weather too, so he hangs out a lot with Jasper, Monty, and Harper, and we get a chance to see some of his skills and discover the crime that got him ejected to Earth. He's a thief, a burglar, and a pickpocket, which is especially embarrassing for his family since his dad was a security man back on the Ark. What happens? We pick up immediately where we left off at the end of season 1. Clark is in a weird white cell, not at all the worst place she's ever been. Honestly, kind of better than her cell back on the Ark, but undeniably a jail cell. Also, Smart Monty has disappeared from his cell across the hall, and a creepy person in a hazmat suit is cleaning it. Clark, in a fit of pique, punches through the small glass window of her cell door, unlocks the door, takes a large shard of glass, and attacks the hazmat-suited person, who turns out to be another teen, though one as yet unknown to us. With the hazmat girl as her hostage, Clark flees the prison area and finds herself in an underground warren of oddly cozy tunnels. She and her hostage end up in a well-appointed cafeteria filled with cheerful, well-dressed people enjoying a good meal. Unsurprisingly, they become quite upset when Clark enters, looking deranged and holding one of their own hostage. She's taken into custody and meets the president of this facility, Dante Wallace. Absolutely sick as fuck name. Dante Wallace explains that she and 47 of her friends have been rescued by the people of Mount Weather, who consider themselves the last bastion of civilization in this region. They've lived in this bunker since the nuclear war and safeguard the legacy of pre-war culture. It's a vault. It's a fallout vault. Sadly for them, the Mount Weatherites have been sealed below ground for so long that they've never built up the radiation tolerance that the grounders have, or that the folks from the Ark have due to the background radiation from space. If the Mount Weatherites go up to the surface without a hazmat suit, they die of radiation poisoning, shriveling up as their skin peels off and they develop hellish boils. Clark finds Dante a little sketchy, and even when she reunites with her friends, including Jasper and Monty, and discovers they are living comfortably among the Mount Weatherites, she remains suspicious. Jasper, on the other hand, has been seduced by the prospect of good food and the hazmat girl, whose name is Maya. Monty has also fallen for the pleasantries of life underground, but he at least takes Clark's paranoia seriously. But Clark Griffin will not be soothed by material abundance, goddammit. She attempts another escape, making it up to the vault door and almost pulling the lever that would open the way to the outside world. Jasper, Monty, and Maya talk her down because opening the door would kill all of the people in Mount Weather like Maya and Dante. And so, Clark doesn't pull the lever. Note that this vault door lever is not Clark's crucial lever for this season. Dante Wallace thanks Clark for not opening the door and flooding the whole facility with deadly radiation. He assures her that he will tell her if he finds any other Ark survivors outside, but unfortunately there's no evidence that any of them are still alive. In the meantime, he suggests that she take her newfound free time to work more on her art. Dante is also a painter, and he and Clark connect over the need of leaders to have a good creative hobby to relieve the stress. Of course, we know what Dante's saying about finding no other Ark survivors is a load of bunk, because we know there's quite a bit going on above ground. For example, Lincoln and Octavia are still fleeing east. Octavia's wound from the Battle of the Dropship is getting worse, and Lincoln is out of antidote and medicines because last season the 100 kept stealing his medicines and using them on each other. He's been trying to keep Octavia's mind off her impending death by teaching her Trigetta slang, but that can only work for so long. Desperate, they head to the Lincoln Memorial, where Lincoln leaves Octavia while he sneaks back into his home village and tries to secure some more medicine without being killed for hanging out with the Ark folks. Poor Raven, meanwhile, is alone at the dropship, dying. A grounder comes to investigate the site, and she shoots him dead with the only gun she can reach. But that's her last bullet, so unfortunately she can't shoot the next person to arrive. I say unfortunately because the next person to arrive is Murphy. Murphy assures her that he's only here because he too is dying from his grounder torture wounds, and he doesn't want to die alone. He even apologizes for shooting her and tries to help her as her injuries worsen. There's some obligatory talk of tragic backstory, where Murphy admits that he sucks because his dad was floated for stealing medicine to save Murphy when he fell ill as a child, and in response to the tragic execution of Dad Murphy, Murphy's mom became an alcoholic who blamed Murphy the younger for his dad's death, and then she died of alcoholism. To which Raven replies, in a turn of phrase that will become a perennial refrain on this show, boo-hoo. Out in the woods, Finn and Bellamy are in fact alive, but they are not doing great. They are captives of Tristan the Grounder General, but luckily Tristan is intercepted by a scouting party from Camp Jaha, led by Kane and Abby. Bellamy and Finn lead Kane and Abby back to the dropship and are horrified to find only Raven and Murphy still there. Bellamy tries once again to kill Murphy, but now Kane won't let him do it. And even Finn's like, no, Murphy has it coming. But Kane, nobly, insists that they don't do extrajudicial killings, which, to be fair, is what started this whole Murphy problem. So Kane takes Murphy and Bellamy back to Camp Jaha as prisoners, and Raven back as a patient, and Finn is also there. Abby writes a message for Clark on the dropship before they go, telling her where they've gone to. And you'll never guess who's also still alive. Yes, it's ex-Chancellor Thelonious Jaha, trapped alone in space on the ring section of the Ark, waiting to die. But he hallucinates visions of Wells as a baby and a teen. Remember Wells? Which motivate him to survive and figure out a way back down to Earth. He makes his way heroically across the ring, even doing an untethered spacewalk to find an old nuclear missile, which he disarms and then squeezes into, shooting himself to Earth. Very raw, Jaha, very raw. Speaking of Jaha, life at Camp Him is not off to a great start. Raven is undergoing surgery for her bullet wound with no anesthesia. The damage is significant, and Jackson and Abby are worried the surgery will kill her. They're also worried that if she survives, she'll lose the use of one or both of her legs since the bullet is so close to her spine and has already damaged it somewhat. And she only has fucking Finn for moral support. Her screams are the dulcet soundtrack to the other nearby hell of Bellamy and Murphy imprisoned together in a storage closet. Murphy finds this reminiscent of being tortured at the Grounder prison camp, and Bellamy, being smart, realizes that that might be where Clark and the rest of the teens are, and that Murphy knows where it is and vaguely how to get there. Alas, there's no one to go looking for the Grounder prison camp with Murphy and Bellamy because Kane has bigger problems. His security people keep spotting mysterious figures out in the woods and wasting their bullets firing on them. And whenever he does send out people to explore, they get speared, captured, and pinned up outside, just like Jasper did back in the day. He refuses Abby's request to send out a search party for Clark, so Abby takes matters into her own hands. Once Raven's surgery is done, and Finn is confident she'll survive, Abby dispatches Finn to free Bellamy and Murphy and sneak out of the camp with them. Abby and David Miller, Miller's dad, arm the boys with guns before they go, which should be fine. Speaking of people getting shot, right around when Kane's people started firing indiscriminately on mysterious figures in the woods, security people started being brought into Mount Weather with bullet wounds. It's weird. Clark, being smart, knows the Grounders don't use guns and that Dante Wallace is lying to her about not encountering any Ark folks. She continues her surreptitious explorations of Mount Weather despite the extreme annoyance of Jasper, who definitely has a crush on Maya now and is definitely going way better than his crush on Octavia did. Clark notices that the Mount Weather men who have been shot also suffer significant radiation burns from the bullet punctures in their hazmat suits, but that they heal incredibly quickly as well. She injures herself in order to get back into the infirmary and notices a weirdly large amount of dialysis equipment running all throughout the infirmary. She follows the pipes to their source and discovers a horrifying room where nearly dead Grounders are strung up like meat and drained of blood, while live Grounders are locked in tiny cages for future extraction. And one of the caged Grounders is Anya, the Grounder General from last season, looking much the worse for wear. It's not easy being a Grounder, and Octavia is also learning this. She awakens at the Lincoln Memorial to find Lincoln the guy missing, and herself under the care of Lincoln's friend, Nyko the healer. I believe they named him after NyQuil. Nyko tells her that Lincoln must die for his betrayal of Tree Crew, and that Lincoln had to turn himself in to get Nyko and the other villagers' help in saving Octavia. Octavia objects to Lincoln's impending execution, and once recovered from her wounds, she takes Nyko hostage and uses him as leverage against Tree Crew, making a deal with their leader Indra to do a hostage exchange for Lincoln. They make the exchange, but just as it happens, a swarm of Reapers attacks, stealing away Lincoln and Nyko, leaving Indra and Octavia terrified and enraged. At first trying to get rid of Octavia, Indra eventually realizes that at least Octavia would make good bait for the Reapers, and so they team up to intercept a Reaper hunting party holding several Tree Crew prisoners. Unfortunately, none of the prisoners are Lincoln, though one is Nyko, who assures Octavia that Lincoln would be proud of her, though, since he's in the clutches of the Reapers, he's definitely fucked. Or is he? Turns out the Reapers don't only eat their captives. And it also turns out it's not a coincidence they live down in the mine tunnels beneath Mount Weather, for they drag their remaining captives, including Lincoln, to a secret door from which issue Cage Wallace, President Dante's son, and Dr. Singh, the chief medical officer of Mount Weather, who are revealed to control the Reapers through the use of a tone generator the Reapers fear and a red drug that they crave. Cage and Sing mark Lincoln for experimentation instead of exsanguination. And Lincoln's not the only one of our heroes down in the tunnels. Clark and Anya have escaped the exsanguination room and fled into the tunnels, fighting Reapers, mountain men, and each other before being backed into a corner at the edge of a hole in the side of the dam which powers Mount Weather. And they jump out into the abyss and improbably survive. But when they wash up in the river below, Anya immediately takes Clark prisoner, with no thought for the work they did to escape together. It's too bad Clark can't call her friends to let them know where she is, because there's now multiple Clark-related search parties, and none of them are successful. Inside Mount Weather, Smart Monty realizes Clark's absence is a bad sign, but once again he and Jasper fight, as Jasper is distracted by the increasing likelihood that he might actually get laid by Maya. And indeed, Maya has reassurances for them about Clark. The reassurance is that Clark went crazy and had to be put in the psych ward, but that is a credible story. Jasper's doubly willing to believe in Maya because she recently took him into the art warehouse for a secret makeout session, so it could really happen for him this time. Out in the woods, Bellamy, Finn, and Murphy capture a grounder whom they spot wearing Clark's dad's watch, something she would never just give up. They haul him back to Clark and Finn's sex bunker. All my favorite CW shows have a sex bunker, and begin to interrogate him. Finn and Murphy want to torture him, but thanks to the fun he had last season with Lincoln, Bellamy knows torture doesn't work. Finn goes a little apeshit and threatens the grounder's life, and he gives up the location where he alleges Clark is. As Bellamy and Murphy debate whether to spare or kill the grounder, Finn callously blows him away. This is a bad sign for Finn's ethical development, as you should never take an action if Murphy is advocating for it. Back in Camp Jaha, Kane is stressing over the knowledge that the aforementioned three idiots are loose in the woods, and that Abby helped them escape. He concludes they have to go back to the ARC standards of discipline, and sentences Abby to a public electroflogging. After capturing a grounder and reassessing this course of action, however, Kane realizes he's falling back into his old ways and decides to give up his chancellorship. He makes Abby the new chancellor and sets out with the captive grounder, hoping to reach a grounder leader and treat for peace and the release of the teens he believes the grounders hold captive. New Chancellor Abby's got a lot on her plate, though, as poor Raven has recovered from her surgery, but without the use of her left leg. Raven's taken this loss very poorly, and is struggling emotionally and physically. But she is back to work, trying to repair Camp Jaha's radio tower. Unfortunately, this means she has to spend time with obnoxious Wick, the other engineer. Together, they come up with a solution for how they can elevate the radio beacon using a weather balloon. Wick also makes Raven a leg brace, though she rejects it and is mad about needing help to adjust to her new mobility issues. And paranoid Arkers, with no stabilizing influence from the absent Marcus, shoot down the weather balloon and lock down camp due to their fear of grounders. Luckily, the weather balloon is up just long enough for Clark to see it. While she was Anya's captive for a while, she managed to get the upper hand and has now taken Anya as her captive. They make it to the dropship, but find nothing but the dead and Abby's message, washed to illegibility by the rain, until they spot the weather balloon. Together they head for the weather balloon in Camp Jaha, and by the time they reach the walls, they've reconciled. Anya agrees to rally grounder support to ally with Camp Jaha and take the fight to Mount Weather, and Clark promises to do the same. They part as friends, teaming up to end this atrocity. Oh wait, what's this? It's Camp Jaha security with the steel chair! They shoot Anya and capture Clark, believing her to be a grounder. But at least Clark's back at Camp Jaha, right? Good thing nobody's out in the woods looking for. Oh wait. Bellamy, Finn, and Murphy are still out there looking for her when they come across the remains of another section of the crash-landed Ark, and, shockingly, survivors. They manage to actually put aside their differences to try and rescue the survivors, but all seems lost when grounders attack. But what's this? It's Octavia with the steel chair! She sounds the acid fog alarm and scares away the grounders, saving her brother and the Ark survivors. Because of the injured survivors, Bellamy wants to return to Camp Jaha, but Finn insists on staying out to look for Clark. Dude, go back! She's there! Foolishly, Bellamy lets him go free, sending fucking Murphy along to watch out for him. Dipshit and Dickhead set out alone into the forest and surely will not be committing any kind of significant atrocity next time we see them. Meanwhile, out in the far-off desert, Thelonious M.F. Jaha finds himself on solid ground for the first time in his life. He meets a forlorn family of drifters who dwell out in the sands, and they take him in. Turns out they live here because their son has a facial mutation, and the grounders consider mutations to be evidence of genetic degradation and leave mutated children out to die of exposure. The only way to save their son was to leave their home forever. Jaha befriends them, but ultimately realizes the parents are going to turn him in for a bounty on quote-unquote sky people because they need a horse to reach the mysterious and apparently heavenly City of Light. He willingly submits to captivity and allows himself to be taken. Unaware their namesake has made it to the ground after all, the citizens of Camp Jaha celebrate the return of Clark, Bellamy, and Octavia, while also stewing over what to do about their many children still imprisoned in Mount Weather. In her function as Chancellor, Abby declares it's not worth expending the manpower needed to go looking for Finn and Murphy, which is true, but is also saying the quiet part out loud. Clark and Bellamy are of course indignant about this, mostly on Finn's behalf, obviously. And with Raven and Wick's help, Clark, Bellamy, and Octavia sneak out through Camp Jaha's electric fence to look for, let's be real here, mostly Finn. Abby's very upset at Raven for doing this, but Raven rightly calls Abby out for ceasing to care about all the missing Ark folks once she got her own daughter back. Out in the woods, there's a lot going on. Finn and Murphy have eyes on a grounder village, Lincoln's hometown of Taunton, D.C. It's where Washington, D.C. was. But they only remember the last part because that's the only part of the sign they have left. Finn wants to go in there and fuck shit up, and Murphy, being Murphy, doesn't object. Kane's also out in the woods with his guards and the captive grounder. He plants his mom's tree from the Ark and tries to be hopeful. Good thing there won't be a nuclear death wave coming through these parts in like 6 months. We'll talk about that later, though. But of course, Kane is quickly captured by grounders and dragged off to a prison where he meets, unbelievably, Thelonious Jaha. You just never know who you're going to find on the ground these days. Bellamy, Clark, and Octavia approach Taunton, but not fast enough. Finn is once again going apeshit. He's herded everybody in the village into a little pen, and he's tearing up the town looking for evidence of Clark. Even Murphy is like, dial it down, dude. Nico tries to convince Finn that this is all just a big misunderstanding when one of the other grounders makes a sudden move and Finn opens fire. The bloodbath begins and Finn kills like kids and old people and like a lot of people. Murphy tries to talk Finn down and in fact doesn't shoot anyone himself, shockingly, but it's far too late for Finn. He slaughters numerous grounders, and Murphy really should have just shot him. And of course, that's when Clark, Bellamy, and Octavia arrive. Too late to stop the violence, but just in time to witness it. Back inside the mountain, Jasper and Smart Monty are debating their next move. Jasper is still suckered into thinking the Mount Weatherites are good guys because he's into Maya, but Monty is getting more and more suspicious and wants to leave. Before they can, however, there's a radiation leak, which harms Maya, and the normal blood transfusions aren't helping. Dr. Singh suggests that perhaps Jasper's blood could, do something more because he's from space. And he jumps at the chance to save Maya. But Smart Monty, being smart, stays by his side the whole time and watches, noticing how practiced Singh is at this whole transfusion business. Smart Monty also starts to wonder, where's all that regular treatment blood coming from? And Monty's right that they shouldn't trust the Mount Weatherites, because beneath the mountain, Cage Wallace is torturing Lincoln. First, he doses Lincoln repeatedly with the red drug, building up his addiction, while also conditioning him to fear the tone generator. Then he begins to force Lincoln to fight others for the drug, driving him to associate violence with the reward of the red drug. Soon, Lincoln has gone mad with addiction and been assimilated into the Reaper horde. Regrouping at Camp Jaha, our heroes gather together to discuss next moves against Mount Weather. Raven explains that she has connected the dots that Smart Monty set up last season and discovered that the Mount Weatherites are using a radio tower of their own to block the Ark folks' radios, and that their interference is definitely what caused the revolutionary dropship to crash so disastrously back in Season 1. So, really, it was a good thing that everybody we like from the Ark had to throw themselves from the sky in makeshift ships without radio guidance. Clark, Abby, Finn, Raven, Octavia, and Bellamy set off to find the radio tower and destroy it. But acid fog rolls in and our heroes are separated. Octavia and Bellamy dive into the Reaper tunnels to look for Lincoln. Abby and Raven take shelter in some special tents brought from Camp Jaha, and Finn and Clark hide in the sex bunker. Finn's a little pissy about how everybody's been acting weird around him since he came home from slaughtering civilians with an automatic weapon. Clark notices that there's also now a dead guy in the bunker, and Finn admits that, yeah, he murdered this guy too after they interrogated him. Clark doesn't feel good about the path Finn's on, which makes two of us. But she does appreciate that he recovered her father's watch and returned it to her. Together in the acid-proof tents, Abby and Raven realize that while the radio interference blanket is up, they can tap into Mount Weather's radio channels undetected. Raven overhears conversation that suggests the mountain men somehow control the acid fog and deploy it at will. Down beneath the mountain, Octavia and Bellamy encounter the Reaperized Lincoln, and yes, he is a cannibal now. It's funny because back in these days, Octavia thinks she's too good for cannibalism. Together, they manage to knock Lincoln out and decide to haul him back to the Hundred's original dropship and tie him up there, just like when they tortured him with electroshocks. Fond memories never fade. Up in the inhabited section of Mount Weather, Sing and Cage are trying to figure out how to extract more blood from the Ark teens they're holding prisoner. The Ark folks' blood is even more effective for healing radiation poison than the Grounders, and like vampires, Sing and Cage are lusting after it. But Dante Wallace insists they cannot tie up and exsanguinate the Ark teens because sublaterally he considers them a more valuable ethnocultural group than the Grounders. He's also suspicious that Sing and Cage engineered the radiation leak that sickened Maya on purpose in order to get some of Jasper's blood in the first place to do experiments with. But Dante is willing to encourage the Ark teens to volunteer to donate some blood and lays the smooze on Jasper. Jasper is easily swayed, Smart Monty and the others less so, especially when Maya, worried about Cage and Sing's moral fiber, reveals the truth about where Mount Weather usually gets its blood from, so the teens end up volunteering for the blood donation anyway, in order to buy time to figure out how to escape. And there are yet more of our heroes in danger right now. Kane and Jaha are in Grounder prison together, and the Grounders are trying to force them to kill each other for entertainment. Kane, as usual, tries to turn this into a situation where he can commit a redemptive suicide, and offers to sacrifice himself so Jaha can go free. Instead, Jaha ignores his bullshit and takes a Grounder girl hostage. But what's this? It's Lexa with the steel chair! The girl that Jaha grabbed, Lexa, is in fact not a mere slave, but the Grounder's high commander. She easily overpowers Jaha and has him released to the Ark folks, bearing a message. Either Camp Jaha clears out in 2 days, or they all die in recompense for Finn's massacre at Tondisi. So, the folks at Camp Jaha are in a bit of a pickle. Though Thelonious is a bit flattered by the name of the camp, he wants to abandon it and make for the City of Light. Abby doesn't feel good about this quixotic pursuit of a vague spiritual location, and Clark, as well as the Hundred's parents, object to leaving behind all the teens in Mount Weather. Jaha becomes enough of a problem about this that they have to lock him up in their makeshift jail. And there's not much time for discussion, because Clark and Abby are both needed back at the teens' dropship. Octavia and Bellamy are trying to detox Lincoln and not succeeding. He's still in Savage Reaper sicko mode. They even bring in Nico, but he has no ideas except euthanizing Lincoln. And he reports that Lexa and her crew are on the way to eliminate all the Ark folks. But seeing Nico's amazement at the Ark's more advanced medical techniques, Clark has an idea to bring Lexa around and potentially form an alliance. And they'll need that alliance, because Cage and Sing are making significant progress on their evil radiation resistance experiments. While plain old blood transfusions only provide the Mount Weatherites with resistance for a few minutes, they think there's a way to make that resistance more permanent. A bone marrow transplant. Dante's like, come on, let's not go full QAnon here. We're already stealing people's blood. But Cage and Sing are in it to win it. But so are the teens trapped inside the mountain with them. Monty, Harper, Miller, and Jasper break into Dante's presidential lair using Miller's B&E skills and find evidence of Camp Jaha in his intelligence briefings. They're delighted to know their families and friends may be alive and on Earth, but their happiness is soon shattered by Harper's mysterious disappearance. Next time we see her, Harper's strapped down on a gurney, and Singh is drilling into her hip to graphically extract her bone marrow, and Harper is definitely not anesthetized, which I don't really understand how that helps other than making Singh and Cage just be more evil, but that's fair. So Clark better pull this alliance off. She deploys her mother to try and save Lincoln while she intercepts Lexa and promises that the Ark folks have a cure for Reaperism. Lexa's interested because of how many of her people she's lost to being made Reapers, and she joins Clark in Lincoln's sick room, just in time to see him die after Abby's treatments fail. But Abby, ever resourceful, takes an Ark shock baton and restarts Lincoln's heart, and somehow the hard reset brings him back to life and he's normal again. Lexa's on board. Just one problem. She wants Finn turned over into her custody as a final condition of the deal, and she will torture and kill him as punishment for the massacre of Tawn DC. Our heroes aren't willing to hand Finn over. And by our heroes, I mean our named characters. The rest of Camp Jaha is totally willing to consign him to death, as many of them already hate him for his original crime of illegal spacewalking. Raven is Finn's leading defender, which lands her in the stockade with Jaha. The security situation with the grounders in the area has become so desperate that our heroes even willingly arm Murphy. Though Clark and Raven do yell at Murphy about Finn's massacre and blame him for not stopping Finn, which is not 100% fair. Probably the only way Murphy could have stopped Finn would have been to shoot him, and then you guys would just be mad at Murphy for shooting Finn. I wouldn't be, though. Everyone's looking for a way out for Finn. Our heroes ask a recovering Lincoln if there's any alternative that the Grounders will accept, and Lincoln is like, no. The Grounders surround Camp Jaha, shouting, "Juice drain, juice down," a Trageta slang phrase that means blood must have blood. They've even released Kane back to Camp Jaha to try and reason with everybody. Lincoln insists there's no way out of this, and they're lucky to have this option because Lexa might want Finn dead, but the other leaders like Indra just want all the Ark folks dead. Abby thinks she can reason with Indra, sets up a meeting. Jaha, though still incarcerated, is advocating for giving Finn up. The teens, concerned about the adults equivocating, escape the compound and head for the dropship. Finn, Clark, Raven, Bellamy, and Murphy meet up there, where Raven admits she wants to try handing over Murphy instead of Finn, and that's why she invited him to this sleepover. Finn's not convinced this would even work. He has a heartfelt moment with Raven that brings their relationship to a close. We get some flashbacks about how Finn actually set up his criminal spacewalk for Raven, who'd always wanted to do a spacewalk and was afraid she would never be allowed because she has a congenital heart murmur and so might not be eligible to become a zero-G mechanic. And when they were caught in the act, Finn took the fall because Raven was already 18 and he was only 17, so he wouldn't get floated. So it was a romantic crime, not a selfish one. To which I say fucking whatever. The teens' escape is causing problems for the adults because Indra rejects Abby's peace overtures since she's already heard reports from her scouts that Finn is free and making a run for it. She leaves to join her soldiers at the dropship where Finn and co are holed up. There, Finn finally decides to end this charade. He distracts the others and sneaks out, turning himself in. Rip Finn. But Grounder justice is elaborate. In fact, they're going to execute him right outside Camp Jaha in a long and laborious process wherein the family and friends of Finn's victims stab and torture him and they burn him at the stake, and all his friends watch from inside Camp Jaha's walls. Clark decides to appeal to Lexa one last time. Raven gives Clark a hidden knife and encourages her to kill Lexa with it for revenge, which does start to seem appealing because Lexa is not willing to compromise on Finn's execution. But she does allow Clark to say goodbye to Finn while he's on the stake. They share a final kiss, and Clark takes advantage of that moment to stab Finn with Raven's knife, putting him out of his and our misery. He thanks her for this. Raven freaks out. And that's that on Finn. Finn is our first title character to die since Wells, I think. And, let's be real here, neither is going to go long mourned by me. Although, that's not Wells' fault, he was just barely on the show at all. So Finn is lol dead, and everybody's sad about this, especially Clark and Raven. The Grounders insist on having a funeral pyre for Finn to complete their revenge ritual, so Clark, Raven, Abby, Kane, Bellamy, Octavia, and Lincoln pack up and join Lexa's convoy to Tawn DC. The alliance is one day old and already very fragile. Lexa's advisors are skeptical of the trustworthiness of our heroes, which they should be, TBH. Indra and the people of Tawn DC also reject Lincoln. But they all manage to have a nice little service for Finn in Ton DC, where the family of his victims come out and spit on his corpse, and then Clark burns his body. Lexa tells Clark a charming story about Lexa's last girlfriend, Kostia, named after the Anacostia River, who was captured by the fearsome Ice Nation's evil queen Naya and tortured to death horrifically. The lesson that Lexa chose to take from this exercise was love is weakness, and Clark's like, I'll incorporate that into my worldview, especially because she's been having hallucinations of Finn staring at her mournfully ever since killing him. After the funeral, they have a little reception in an abandoned metro station, and everything's going surprisingly well until Kane offers some primo-aged space whiskey to Lexa, and her advisor discovers it's poisoned. This gets our heroes justifiably locked up, and Raven is accused of the poisoning, since she does now have some serious beef with Lexa. Even our heroes suspect Raven, who is defiant even as a mysterious bottle is discovered on her person. Lexa condemns her to death. Clark is extra depressed because her mom tries to comfort her by saying, I know how you feel, sweetie. I was just as down when I had to condemn your father to die back up on the Ark. 1.5 seasons into this show and you've already become your own mother, Clark. Raven is strung up to be tortured to death, and Kane and Clark are desperately brainstorming how to prove it wasn't her, especially since there's actual evidence implicating her. But together, Clark, Kane, Bellamy, and Clark's hallucination of Finn realized that the poison was not in the liquor and not in the bottle planted on Raven, but in fact placed in Lexa's cup ahead of time by her advisor to sabotage the Grounder Ark alliance. They bring this supposition to Lexa. For some reason, she believes them, freeing Raven and stringing up her traitorous advisor instead. Up in the mountain, Jasper and Monty are worrying about Harper's disappearance. They scheme up a way to send out a radio signal to Camp Jaha. With the help of Maya and Miller, they find a spot deep in Mount Weather's art storage vault where they can tap into the radio lines. Monty sets up a looping message to broadcast out, but realizes that the radio interference from Mount Weather is preventing the Ark folks from receiving it. He needs to access the Mount Weather command center in order to shut down the interference, at least briefly, so he can get the word out. Smart Monty sneaks into the command center and manages to lift the interference. But on his way out, he's caught by Cage Wallace and one of his loyal guards, Emerson, and hauled down to the secret exsanguination cages, where he finds poor Harper suffering the wounds of several vicious marrow extractions. Back in the forest, our heroes are reeling from the roller coaster of a day they've just had when Raven picks up Monty's signal. This sign of life from inside the mountain pushes Clark to agree to Bellamy's dangerous plan. With Lincoln's help, Bellamy will infiltrate the Reaper tunnels and then Mount Weather itself, playing the inside man for the Ark folks. With this new plan in hand, and a willingness to sacrifice her best friend, Clark dismisses her Finn hallucination for the last time with Lexa's words, love is weakness. And when Abby offers her Finn's ashes in a coffee can, she turns them down. I'm fairly certain something hilarious is going to happen with Finn's ashes either next season or the one after that, so flag those ashes in a coffee can for later. Our heroes, now set on this Bellamy infiltration plan, split up. Bellamy and Lincoln head for Mount Weather. Clark and Abby head back to Ton DC to meet up with Lexa. Octavia and Kane head back to Camp Jaha. And it's a good thing they get back to Camp Jaha when they do, because things are getting tense over there. Indra brought a delegation of Grounder warriors to the camp so they can begin strategizing together. But it turns out the Grounders of Ton DC remember that Murphy was also at Finn's massacre. Murphy gets into a scuffle with one of the Grounders, which quickly becomes a brawl, in part also due to Jaha being a Debbie Downer about the potential of the alliance. Octavia and Kane try to smooth things over. Octavia makes overtures to Indra about training with the Grounders, which are quickly shot down. Kane offers to train the Grounders to use guns, but this is also shot down, as Octavia reveals that any time a Grounder is caught using a gun, the Mountain Men kill not only that person, but also their entire village. In the end, it is Octavia who manages to break through to Indra, as she subjects herself to a punishing battle with one of the Grounder warriors in order to prove herself. And it works. Indra is so impressed with Octavia's determination that she offers to make Octavia her second and train her in Grounder culture and warfare. While Kane and Octavia are distracted being useful, Camp Jaha's two top pariahs, Murphy and Jaha himself, are on a weird little sortie of their own. You see, neither one feels particularly good about life at Camp Jaha, especially with all the Grounders there. So Jaha brings Murphy from his janitorial assignment and gets him to guide Jaha to Wells's grave. Remember Wells? It's an awkward trip, as Murphy hasn't forgotten about how Jaha floated his dad. But it turns out neither has Jaha, who remembers every person he executed. Hearing that Wells died because someone wants revenge on his father moves Jaha deeply, and he decides to do something utterly insane: be nice to Murphy. It works, and when Jaha reveals that he's headed to the City of Light with a few others who reject the Grounder Alliance and Mount Weather War, Murphy decides to go with them. Surprisingly, in a roundabout way, this will be the best thing that ever happens to Murphy. Over in Ton, D.C., something unbelievably stupid is about to happen. While planning the war with Lexa, Clark gets into a squabble with another Grounder, who later attacks her out in the woods. Luckily, Lexa finds her and is all set to punish the insubordinate Grounder when suddenly they hear a fearsome roar from the woods. It's a beast called the Pauna, and it's so dangerous that Lexa leaves the troublemaker there to die as bait while she and Clark run. They hide in some sunken ruins, but as we pan around the set, we realize that, oh my god, these are the ruins of the Smithsonian National Zoo primate house. The Pauna is a monstrous mutant gorilla. Lexa's wounded, and Clark goes out of her way to save her, which Lexa thinks is very cringe. But together, they manage to outsmart the ape and trap it in the enclosure, where it rages, which reminds Clark of the cages, where the Mount Weatherites keep their Grounder victims, which means Mount Weather is actually full of angry Grounders who just need to be released. Speaking of Mount Weather, Bellamy and Lincoln are on their way there, and on the way, they chat about bro stuff. Lincoln reveals that he met a guy from the Ark once before, actually, a suicidal man who launched himself to Earth in one of the mini-pods like Raven did. Lincoln's father forced him to execute the stranger from the sky, and Lincoln finds it very depressing on how everyone in the world demands he become a killer. Lincoln also mentions that the Reaper Initiative is called Project Cerberus, which Bellamy likes because he and Octavia's shared sibling special interest is classical mythology and Roman history. That's where he got Octavia's name, actually. Bellamy's mother let him name Octavia even though he was a child because she basically handed Octavia off into his care from the moment she was born. One of his earliest memories is trying to silence Octavia's crying by giving her his pinky finger to nibble upon. It's funny because she later becomes a cannibal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As they draw closer to the core of Mount Weather, Lincoln begins to get nervous, insisting he can't resist the red drug. But before they can reassess the plan, they're caught by a group of Reapers, and Lincoln has to go back into Reaper mode, pretending to hold Bellamy prisoner. The Reapers deliver their captives to Dr. Singh. Instead of helping Bellamy overpower the Reapers and guards, Lincoln falls to temptation and takes the red drug. Singh, not realizing Bellamy is from space, marks him as another Grounder to be exsanguinated, and he's hauled away into the harvesting cages. Outside, Clark, Abby, and Lexa are on their way to Camp Jaha when they're attacked by mountain men. Luckily, Octavia and Indra are on the prowl and save their leaders. Clark convinces them not to kill one of the Mount Weatherites, who turns out to be Cage's lackey, Emerson. They haul Emerson back to Camp Jaha and put him up in one of the surviving airlocks, which Raven rigs to scrub out radiation from the air so Emerson can take off his hazmat suit. Emerson, well trained at being a bad guy, refuses to give up any info, but Clark convinces Kane not to torture him. As she knows from experience, torture doesn't work. But Abby and Jackson manage to extract some information from him anyway, via biohacking. They discover genetic anomalies circulating in his bloodstream that align with the blood of the Ark folks, so they know the extraction of their friends has already begun. Despair sets in. If only they could know what was happening inside the mountain. Luckily, they have an inside man. Bellamy's in bad shape when he first wakes up, though, finding himself in a cage awaiting exsanguination. The Grounder girl in the cage above him, Echo, is very hostile when she discovers he's from the Ark, but he tells her that he's planning to take down the mountain men and free her, so they should try to get along. And when guards come to prepare Echo for exsanguination, Bellamy makes such a big scene that they take him instead. Not all hope is lost for Bellamy, because Maya and Jasper are starting to get very worried about the disappearance of Monty and Harper. Maya heads off to try and investigate on her own, but Jasper's not satisfied with more waiting. He goes to Dante Wallace directly and threatens the president's life. Dante realizes immediately what the disappearances mean and takes Jasper with him to confront Cage and Singh in the marrow extraction room. There they find Cage and Singh literally in the midst of drilling into Harper's bones, as well as Smart Monty and 46 empty cages waiting for the rest of the Ark teens trapped in the mountain. Dante berates them for their cruelty, and he and Jasper liberate Harper and Monty. The teens rush off to find their friends and get ready to leave, as Dante promises them their freedom. See, it's gonna be fine. Maya's investigation leads her back to the medical ward, where she discovers a woman being treated for radiation poisoning, recovering in record time. Maya, being smart, realizes there must be an ARC person providing the blood. She sneaks into the exsanguination chamber and finds the strung-up Bellamy, rushing to free him. As he regains consciousness, he realizes she must be Maya, the friendly Mount Weatherite, but their team-up is interrupted by the return of one of the guards. Bellamy plays dead to draw the guard near him, and they get into a scuffle. Just when it looks like Bellamy will lose, he shoves the guard near Echo's cage, and Echo restrains him long enough for Bellamy to kill him. Maya helps Bellamy disguise himself with the guard's uniform, though he must keep a low profile because the mountain's small community means he will be recognized quickly as a stranger. Bellamy promises to return for Echo as soon as he can. Maya agrees to help him as much as she's able, and is touched that Clark has been telling folks on the outside that there are nice Mount Weatherites, too. Together, Bellamy and Maya head for the teens' dorm. They're moments too late. While they were scuffling and quick-changing, Cage Wallace carried out a coup against his father, locking Dante up and luring everyone to his side with the promise of freedom on the surface, the price being just a little touch of crimes against humanity. The door to the dorm has been sealed, and though Maya and Bellamy can see Jasper, Monty, and the others on the other side, they can't reach them. Bellamy and Maya head for the radio that Monty installed in the art storage room. Along the way, naive Bellamy is shocked to discover that Mount Weather is full of children and civilians, and that the guard he, Maya, and Echo killed has an adorable little kid. Bellamy makes the call back to Camp Jaha, and boy was that what Clark needed to hear right then. She and Raven, depressed and fighting, bounce back to life upon hearing from their friend. Bellamy insists they need to find a non-scorched earth approach to overthrowing Mount Weather so they don't have to kill the cute little kids. And Clark's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Turn off the acid fog and I'll see what I can do. Bellamy agrees if his friends will create a distraction on the outside to somehow make things easier for him on the inside. Clark storms out to Emerson's airlock and tells him he's being released to deliver a message to his leaders. Abby objects to releasing their captive, but Clark insists and tells her mom basically that Chancellor is bullshit and Clark is the real power here. Kane admits it's true and convinces Abby to go along with Clark. Clark releases Emerson in his hazmat suit, telling him that Mount Weather will never defeat the secret army they have lying in wait, which is magically immune to the acid fog. As Emerson leaves, Octavia asks what the point of that exercise was, and Clark suggests that it will keep the Mount Weatherites' attention outside the mountain, not inside, with Bellamy. Let's now pivot 180 degrees and check in on Jaha and Murphy. Somehow, somewhere, they found a desert to get lost in. Supposedly this is near Manhattan or something, which makes no fucking sense, especially as the show goes on. But what the fuck ever, guys, okay. Anyway, Jaha, Murphy, and the red shirts Jaha recruited from Camp Him are struggling across the dunes when they meet a grounder girl pulling a cart. She introduces herself as Emori, a fellow traveler to the City of Light who was headed there with her brother when they were attacked by highwaymen and her brother was killed. Jaha and, unexpectedly, Murphy are friendly to Emori, sharing some water with her, inviting her to join their group since she knows the way. She agrees as long as they help her pull her cart. When it's Murphy's turn to help her, they actually strike up a conversation about both being rejects from their home group. Murphy admits he's been cast out for being a multiple murderer, but troublingly, Emori thinks that's kind of hot. Emori admits she was cast out because her left hand is mutated, which activated her clan's eugenics imperative. She shows Murphy her mutated hand, which she usually keeps covered, and Murphy thinks it's kind of hot. But the good times, as usual, are short-lived for Murphy and Jaha, because Emori's brother is not dead. He's lying in wait for them in an ambush. Emori takes Murphy hostage and forces Jaha and Co. to give up all their supplies. But before Emori escapes with her brother, she whispers the directions to the City of Light to Murphy. With their supplies gone, the red shirts are losing hope, but Murphy insists that Emori told him the truth, which doesn't seem likely, but okay, bud. And Jaha believes him, which still doesn't make it better. Though Jaha is surprised that Murphy's willing to continue the pilgrimage, but Murphy, being smart, realizes he's now met the only girl in the whole world fucked up enough to date him. So, he's gotta strike while the iron's hot, if you know what I mean. Back at Mount Weather, Emerson has arrived with Clark's message about the secret Grounder army, but Cage Wallace is unfazed. He's received the bone marrow transplant and can now walk the surface without fear, and it's only increased his certainty that the Mount Weatherite should stay the course, suck out the Arcteen's bone marrow, subjugate the Grounders. He assures Emerson that he's got a plan, and that plan is to drop a missile on Ton DC, killing Clark, Lexa, and all the Grounder and Ark fighters. Luckily, undercover Bellamy overhears this convo and relays the information to Clark. Of course, the context in which Bellamy hears this conversation is quite bad, because with the teens sealed up in their dorm, Sing and Cage have gone crazy with harvesting, and they discuss their mass murder scheme over a glass of marrow and the broken corpse of a 17-year-old. So Clark promises to head to TonDC and warn everybody, though she lies to Bellamy and tells him Octavia's not at TonDC and she's not in danger. And at the same time, Bellamy resolves to help his friends who are being harvested right now, however he can. First stop in Bellamy's scheme is the teens' prison dorm. He joins the guard party helping Sing capture her victims and manages to slip Jasper a gun. Next stop is the imprisoned ex-president Dante Wallace. Using his guard uniform to go undercover as Dante's lunch delivery man, Bellamy tells Dante that the teens are being harvested and he needs help to stop the murders. Dante slips him some insider knowledge about how to sabotage the radiation scrubbers on specific levels of the facility. As he scuttles off to carry out this scheme, though, Bellamy learns from Raven that Octavia is at TonDC and is disturbed that Clark would lie to him about his sister's location. But he doesn't have long to brood. Sing selects Jasper for her next harvest, and even with the gun that Bellamy gave him, he's quickly overpowered. But what's this? It's radiation with the steel chair! Bellamy and Dante's plan works perfectly, and they flood the level with radiation, killing Sing and her guards, but leaving the Ark teens untouched. The teens are loose in the facility, armed with scavenged weapons, Bellamy scuttling freely through the air vents, and Dante has turned on Cage. Cage is hurt by this, as he quickly figures out that his dad is the one who helped Bellamy kill like 50 other people. But Cage still loves his dad in the worst way. And so against Dante's will, Cage injects him with harvested teen bone marrow to grant him radiation resistance. Back out in TonDC, Clark arrives in the nick of time and rushes to tell Lexa about the missile strike. Lexa agrees that they must flee, but insists they cannot tell anyone else. To evacuate the city would be to reveal to the Mount Weatherites that our heroes have an inside man. It would set off a spy hunt sure to reveal Bellamy. Clark half-heartedly objects, but she can't resist Lexa's brutal logic, and the two of them sneak out of town. While they're out in the woods, Clark realizes that the Mount Weatherites must have a spotter there, so if they could catch the spotter in time, they might be able to stop the missile. Lexa thinks this idea is also kind of dumb. Then Clark insists on turning back when she sees her mom heading into TonDC. Clark runs back to town, grabs Abby, and drags her out of range, while Abby, baffled, tries to figure out what's going on. But Abby learns what's up pretty quick because then the missile drops just as she and Clark make it to a safe distance. TonDC goes up in a massive plume of fire, and Abby realizes that Clark and Lexa knew what was coming and chose not to warn anyone. While Abby has made a lot of mistakes in her life, this is a bridge too far for her. She rejects Clark, rushing back to town to see if she can help doctor-wise. Both Kane and Indra are somewhere among the wreckage. One person who luckily wasn't on site at the time, though, was Octavia, because she was on guard at the border at the time of the missile strike. While on duty, she heard a weird noise in the woods and went to investigate it. There, she found the re-reaperized Lincoln, on the prowl for people to capture and turn into Cage and Sing for more drugs. Octavia yells at him about this and tells him to nut up, and it works! Drug addiction cured! Just in time for him and Octavia to witness TonDC's total annihilation. Thus ends Washington, D.C. for the second time. Clark is losing it, but Lexa pulls her together, and they agree that this just means the Mountain Men have it coming more than ever. Abby, Lincoln, and Octavia rush to help the wounded, and are able to pull Indra from the wreckage. But what's this? It's the Mount Weather spotter with the steel chair. Steel chair here meaning sniper rifle. He shoots Indra as she is rescued. So our heroes rush to cover, and every time they make a move to help someone, the sniper opens fire. Making it worse is that Abby can hear Kane buried somewhere in the rubble. Lincoln and Octavia dash through the kill zone with Indra, and once they're safe, Lincoln goes to hunt for the sniper, leaving Octavia to rally everyone to clear the rubble. And they should hurry, because Abby has crawled into the wreckage alone to look for Kane. And when she finds Kane, she discovers he's been both impaled on rebar and crushed by a big rock, and the pressure from the big rock is all that's keeping him from bleeding out. So the two of them settle in for the long haul. When Kane expresses worry for Clark, Abby admits that Clark knew about the missile strike and did nothing about it, and she's pissed at Clark now. But Kane points out there's no way Clark could know better. She grew up on the Ark, a place where people got floated regularly for the good of the collective. In the woods looking for the sniper, Lincoln runs across Lexa and Clark, and he's like, "That's weird, how you gals get out here so fast?" And they're like, "LOL, just eager to kill the sniper, I guess." And they catch up to the sniper, Clark serving as a distraction while Lincoln sneaks up on him. But what's this? It's the sniper with a Reaper torture tone generator. Lincoln falls, defeated, and the sniper takes him hostage. Lincoln begs Clark to sacrifice him. Clark pulls off a sick trick shot instead, shooting Lincoln through the shoulder. The bullet goes clean through and kills the sniper behind him, which was pretty cool. They arrive back at the location formerly known as Tondisi and now known as a smoking crater to find Octavia managing things artfully in their absence. She rallied the grounders behind her, threw up a smoke screen to prevent the sniper from getting anybody else while Lincoln and co were hunting him down, and rescued Abby Kane and many others. Damn, Octavia's a natural leader. I hope we'll see her take command of some kind of large group or force in the future sometime. I'm sure she'll be great at it. Grateful for being rescued, the injured but alive Indra forgives Lincoln for betraying Tree Crew 6 ways from Sunday and invites both him and Octavia to join her as she marches with Lexa to Mount Weather. Clark is going too, because she noticed the Mount Weather sniper wasn't wearing a hazmat suit, which means the pace of the bone marrow extractions is picking up. She tells Abby she's headed to war, and Abby tells her not to forget that they are the good guys. Oh, Abby, I'm so sorry, but you were so naive then. Whew, that was pretty crazy, huh? Let's take a breather and check in on our pals out in the desert. Murphy, Jaha, and the last remaining couple red shirts are meandering through the desert, hoping Amori didn't steer them wrong. Unfortunately, they do then stumble across a minefield, so somebody made a mistake somewhere down the line. We can blame Murphy, everybody else always does. 2 of their red shirts blow up, and then a sandstorm rolls in. They hunker down exactly where they stand and wait for it to pass. Then they begin very, very slowly, very, very carefully picking their way through. In the distance, past the furthest dune, they can see some kind of brilliant glow, so they know this is the last obstacle. Jaha leads the way, feeling out in front of himself with his walking stick, Murphy and the red shirts following in his exact footsteps. At the end of this agonizing process, they cross the last dune to finally see their longtime destination. And what is it? What is the City of Light? It's a big field of solar panels. Murphy is pissed, but Jaha's in denial, running out into the solar farm to look for something more. They notice that the solar panels are surprisingly undamaged for being at least presumably like a century old, not to mention enduring a nuclear war. Murphy, ever helpful, decides to rectify this issue by chucking a rock at one of them. This draws the attention of a no-shit drone, which flies away. Jaha pursues the drone to the shore of like the Chesapeake, Long Island Sound, possibly the Atlantic Ocean, where a boat awaits. He convinces Murphy and the 2 remaining red shirts to hop in, and they sail after the drone towards God knows what. Back down south, the Grounder Ark Alliance gathers near Mount Weather, just outside the range of the acid fog. They can't draw any closer until Bellamy, collaborating with Wick and Raven via Camp Jaha's radio, figures out how to permanently disable the acid fog. Wick and Raven want to do science to it, assuring Bellamy that if the Mount Weatherites have that much acid on hand, they'll definitely have something with which to neutralize it as well. Time is of the essence, though, as the Mount Weather guards are hot on Bellamy's heels, and the Grounder Archer army is waiting on his signal. Bellamy breaks into the acid fog storage room and starts looking for the controls. The process is slow because he has to read out the menu screens to Raven and Wick, who then figure out what the options actually mean and explain it to him. They discover a passivation option, which they tell Bellamy will neutralize the acid. Bellamy activates passivation and destroys the acid fog. Wick and Raven send up a flare to let Clark and Lexa know the fog is disabled, and in their excitement begin to accidentally have sex, because it is a CW show and we haven't done sex in a long time. It's good that the army will have something to do now, because things are getting awkward at the Alliance camp. Octavia has figured out that Clark and Lexa knew about the missile ahead of time, and she's mad about it. She says she'll tell everyone and cause an uproar. Clark wants to talk her down, but Lexa thinks it would be better just to kill her. Clark stops this assassination of Octavia and confronts Lexa about how she spends so much time raging about and killing anyone who's a threat, even when they're actually her allies. Lexa decides she trusts Clark, and Clark is proud of Lexa for taking the moral high ground. Lexa decides this is a good time to kiss Clark, though. And TBH, no disrespect, but honestly, Lexa, it's a little soon after you had Clark's last love interest killed. Also, Lexa, Clark's pussy is cursed, and everyone who fucks her dies. Clark also feels it's a little bit soon to be getting into a new relationship after the whole Finn thing, but luckily, the awkward moment can't go on for too long because Clark and Lexa notice Raven's flare in the sky. They gather their forces and begin marching towards the mountain. Back in the acid fog room, Bellamy notices that the manual indicators on the acid tank read 0 pH, i.e., still super acidic. He tries to call Raven, but his radio signal is blocked. Also, she's busy having sex. As Bellamy watches in horror, the computer resets, and he realizes that the Mount Weather security forces discovered him and prevented him from actually completing the passivation. The guards start hammering on the door, and Bellamy searches for another escape route. He hides behind an oxygen tank and realizes he's still got an acetylene torch left from earlier operations. Pure oxygen and fire, you say? Two great tastes that taste great together. The guards burst in, and Bellamy flees into an air duct. Cage Wallace prepares to release the acid fog and kill Clark, Lexa, Octavia, Lincoln, Indra, and all their soldiers. But just as he activates their release, the acetylene torch that Bellamy rigged to burn the side of the oxygen tank breaks through the metal and triggers a massive explosion. The whole acid fog room, all the acid fog, and the 5 guards are obliterated. Bellamy, luckily, escapes through the vents and lives to fight another episode. With no acid fog at his command, Cage realizes that even the Reapers aren't a large enough force to defeat the Alliance army, which is closing in on Mount Weather's location. Ahead of the battle, Clark tries to assign Octavia away from the front to protect her. Octavia blows her off and tells Clark to leave her alone. After Clark leaves, Indra and Octavia talk about the missile strike, and to Octavia's surprise, Indra shrugs off Lex's culpability. Indra knows hers is not to reason why. She and Octavia are here to do, and die. The final showdown. 4 teams. Bellamy, inside the mountain, freeing the Grounder blood prisoners and rallying the ARC teens along with Jasper, Monty, Miller, and Harper. Complication. Bellamy's radio signal is shut down and he can't communicate with any of the teams on the outside. Second team. Raven and Wick at the dam that provides Mount Weather with its power, shutting down the turbines to power down the whole facility. Complication. Raven was mean to Wick after they had sex and he's pissy about it, damaging their working relationship. Third team. Indra, Octavia, and Action Motherfucking Jackson down in the tunnels beneath Mount Weather, busting in from beneath. Complication. They're flying a little blind down here because Lincoln's not emotionally strong enough to return to the tunnels after what happened last time, and so he can't guide them. Clark and Lexa at the front door are our 4th team. They're drilling into the door and planting a rocket fuel bomb made by Raven. Complication. They have only a minute or 2 window after Raven and Wick shut down the power before the emergency power generator kicks in on Mount Weather, during which time Clark and Lexa must detonate the bomb and blow the lock. Let's start down below the mountain. Octavia, Indra, and Action Jackson are navigating the tunnels as best they can with a map Lincoln drew. Octavia thanks Indra for forgiving Lincoln and accepting her. Indra acknowledges that Lincoln is a good guy and her friend. Reapers attack, but Jackson neutralizes them with a tone generator that Raven built. Action Jackson! They drug the Reapers instead of killing them, which Indra appreciates when she recognizes one of them as a lost friend. The team reaches the door beneath the mountain and posts up to wait for the signal. Indra tells Octavia she's proud of her and that Octavia is a true grounder, and for the first time in her life, Octavia feels like part of something. Deeper inside the mountain, Bellamy returns to the blood harvesting chamber and frees Echo and the other grounders. He asks her to wait for him there while he gathers up the ARC teens, and together their forces will fight their way out. Just then, Cage makes a facility-wide announcement that he is shifting into full harvest mode. He and the Mount Weather doctors will be extracting bone marrow from all their ARC captives non-stop until every loyal Mount Weatherite is made radiation resistant. Bellamy rushes out to gather his friends, leaving Echo and the grounders behind. Bellamy's not fast enough. The Mount Weather guards continue their door-to-door searches, executing anyone who's found hiding the ARC teens. They capture Jasper, Maya, Miller, and several others, but luckily Bellamy rescues them just in time, along with Maya's dad. He sends Maya's dad and the other teens to meet Echo in the harvest chamber. Bellamy, Maya, and Jasper go searching for the rest of the teens, including Monty, who are still in hiding or otherwise unaccounted for. Preparing to lead his people into bone marrow extraction seclusion, Cage goes to his father's cell one last time and chats with him about how the Mount Weatherites are in an awkward position. Dante castigates him for his disastrous tenure as president, but when Cage impresses upon him the direness of the situation, Dante offers up some possible solutions. Out at the dam, Raven and Wick are awkwardly setting up their rocket fuel bombs while not talking to each other about how they had sex but maybe don't actually like each other. A Mount Weather guard attacks them, and though Wick fights him off, the last of their 5 bombs is broken, which is a big problem because there are 5 turbines that need to be destroyed. Raven realizes she can overload the remaining turbine by forcing it to take over the full workload of the other 4. She and Wick destroy the 4 turbines they can and prepare the last one to fail, but they are hemmed in by Mount Weatherites just as they make to flee the site and are caught in the explosion when the last turbine overloads. Outside, Clark and Lexa are rallying the troops, with Lexa giving a speech ending in the Grounders' evergreen guiding principle: juice drain, juice down. Lincoln and Miller's dad insert the rocket fuel bomb into the vault door, Lincoln encouraging the nervous dad by reminding him that Miller is depending on him. While they wait for Raven and Wick to blow the generators, Lexa and Clark bond, and Lexa invites her to visit the Grounder capital of Polis. The Mountain Men suddenly open fire on the Grounder Ark Alliance. Even though Wick and Raven have blown the power, Clark can't set off the bomb because of the radio interference, and she can't get close enough to trigger it by hand because the Mountain Men are laying down suppressive fire. But heroically, Lincoln shoots the bomb with a flaming arrow and shatters the lock. Lexa takes a contingent of Grounder soldiers up the ridge to eliminate the Mountain Men snipers, while Lincoln and Clark rally their soldiers to pull open the vault door. Inside the mountain, Bellamy, Jasper, and Maya find Monty, who hid even as his protectors were executed by the Mountain Men in front of him because he overheard something so important that he knew he had to bring it to Bellamy. The Mountain Men know that the Grounder captives are critical to Bellamy's plan and are headed for the Blood Harvest Chamber right now. Our heroes rush to the Harvest Chamber to find Maya's dad dead on the ground and Echo and all the Grounders gone, as well as the Ark teens. In the dam, Raven and Wick come to after the explosion and discover Raven's leg brace is broken. She won't be able to flee in time, and Wick promises to stay with her. They are captured by the Mountain Men. Now out front, Lincoln and Clark have gotten the door open, but find no soldiers waiting inside to defend the mountain. Lexa returns from the ridge with Emerson in tow, and Clark's excited about getting into the mountain and getting revenge, but Lexa informs her that's not what's going down today. Emerson offered Lexa a deal on behalf of Cage and Dante. Betray Clark and they will free all the Grounder blood prisoners. After all, they won't need the Grounders anymore if they can have the Ark teens' bone marrow. Echo and the other Grounders emerge from the door and rejoin the Grounder army. Lexa sounds the retreat and forces Lincoln to accompany her, even as he resists. Lexa's final words to Clark are a phrase she learned from Clark, the traditional way of saying goodbye to the dead aboard the Ark. May we meet again. Down below the mountain, Indra hears the retreat and orders her forces to comply. Octavia refuses because that wasn't the plan, but Indra rejects her for her disobedience, and Octavia's belonging is ripped away just as quickly as she found it. Jackson tells Octavia to come with him so they can rejoin the other Arkers, and Octavia rejects him in her identity as an Ark person, too. Octavia is left alone in the mine tunnels. And out front, Clark is stunned. Miller's dad, Jackson, and the others want to head back to Camp Jaha to rally their remaining forces and try again, but Clark refuses to leave. She can't handle this defeat. Our heroes are in their darkest hour so far. Down in the tunnels, Octavia is raging and feels even worse when the corpse disposal chute opens and one of the Ark teens whom Bellamy managed to rescue once before is dumped out of it, drained of bone marrow and dead. Clark arrives and she and Octavia immediately get into a fight about what to do next. Bellamy arrives with Monty, Maya, and Jasper and lets Clark and Octavia into the mountain. Bellamy wants to speak to Dante Wallace, but Maya's hazmat suit is running out of air, and now that the vault door is open, the whole facility is flooded with radiation. The only place that Maya can breathe safely in the whole world is level 5, where everyone else from Mount Weather, including Cage Wallace and his marrow extractors, are holed up, drilling into the various Ark teens' bones. So our heroes split up. Jasper and Maya head to level 5 with Octavia for protection, while Clark, Monty, and Bellamy go to Dante Wallace. Jasper, Maya, and Octavia make it to level 5 just in time and hide out in a storage closet away from everybody else. Jasper realizes Maya can't survive anywhere else in the whole world unless she receives a bone marrow treatment herself, but she'll never be safe while Cage is in charge. So they connect with a Mount Weather guard who is also against the extractions, and he agrees to smuggle Jasper into the extraction chamber to kill Cage. Octavia gives him a knife and instructions on how to kill Cage, and Maya gives Jasper a kiss and he tells her he loves her. So Jasper's got a plan here, but unfortunately for him, Clark, Bellamy, and Monty have another. They've found Dante sitting up in his cell, immune to the radiation because the bone marrow Cage forced on him. Dante admits there's no one watching the facility's command center since everyone without a bone marrow treatment had to flee to level 5. Our heroes take him hostage and drag him to the command center. As Smart Monty breaks them into the room, Dante reminds Clark that as president, he has to bear the pain of command decisions so his people don't have to. That's why he won't help the teens even though he knows what Cage is doing is wrong. Bellamy, being smart, realizes Dante is the one who set Lex up to betray them, not stupid Cage. Inside the command center, Monty takes control of the CCTV cameras and discovers horrors on level 5. Cage and Emerson have set up an emergency extraction room, and not only do they have the teens captured, they also have Raven and Wick, and even Miller's dad, Kane, and Abby. How did they get Cain and Abby? Not important. What is important is that they've begun drilling poor Raven. Clark calls Cage over the radio and says she's holding his dad hostage. Dante encourages Cage to continue the extractions no matter the cost. Cage agrees, so Clark shoots Dante in the chest. Without her hostage, she has to escalate threats. So she threatens to irradiate level 5 and kill everyone. She doesn't know how to do that necessarily, but she orders Smart Monty to figure it out. Cage tries to call her bluff by switching out Raven for Abby, drilling into Clark's mother as she watches. Cain, horrified, begs Cage to reconsider because goddammit, people can donate bone marrow. It doesn't have to be like this. Down on level 5, Octavia and Maya are discovered and have to flee the guards, running into the cafeteria where all the other Mount Weather civilians are sheltering. Bellamy and Clark see them appear on the CCTV. Jasper is also closing on Cage. Smart Monty is almost done setting up the irradiation switch, but he needs to hurry, because Emerson, the only other mountain man besides Cage now immune to the radiation, is about to break into the command center and kill him, Clark, and Bellamy. The switch is active. Jasper is about to kill Cage. Emerson is almost through the door. Octavia and Maya are surrounded by hostile guards, and Abby is bleeding out on the operating table. Clark reaches out to pull the lever, and Bellamy takes hold of it too. They pull the switch together. Radiation floods level 5, and the Mount Weatherites begin to die in agony, including everyone who tried to do the right thing and help the ARC teens, including all the cute little kids that we saw at the kindergarten earlier, including Maya. Octavia cares for the dying Maya until Jasper, freaking out, arrives. The ARC folks, immune to the radiation, easily overpower the dying guards and free themselves. Emerson and Cage, the last mountain men remaining with bone marrow treatments, flee in opposite directions. Clark, Bellamy, and Monty, architects of what we can only honestly describe as a genocide, descend to level 5 to see what they have wrought. The dead are everywhere. Jasper is heartbroken, weeping over Maya's dead body. Her last words, "None of us is innocent." When Smart Monty arrives, Jasper argues with him about his culpability in irradiating the level, and for once, Jasper is right. Clark and Bellamy could not have done it without Monty's computer help. Clark finds her mother and asks for absolution, saying she was only trying to be the good guy. Abby tells Clark she was wrong. There are no good guys. Everyone else is reunited over the corpses of their abusers. Out in the woods, Lincoln is freaking out about what might be going on the mountain without him. Lexa and Indra have tied him up to prevent him from going back and breaking the treaty with the mountain men, but Indra, feeling sorry for him, slips him a knife. Lincoln runs to the mountain and on the way bumps into the escaped Cage Wallace. Cage tries to scare Lincoln with a tone generator and then tempt him with red drug, but Lincoln, pissed as all get out, slices off Cage's hands and injects him with the red drug, leaving him to die in handless drug-fueled agony/ecstasy. Our heroes head home. Cain, Abby, Octavia, Lincoln, Harper, Monty, Jasper, Bellamy, Jackson, Raven, Wick, Miller, and Miller's dad return to Camp Jaha, but Clark refuses to rejoin them. Overcome with guilt, she tells Bellamy she's leaving because she has to bear the burden of this terrible atrocity so her friends don't have to. They say goodbye. May we meet again. And Clark heads out into the wilderness. But the story's not over yet. Remember our dynamic duo of Jaha and Murphy? When last we saw them, they were getting to a rickety rowboat with some red shirts to follow a drone into the sea. Their boat is attacked by a sea monster, and the red shirts are endangered. Murphy uncharacteristically tries to help them, but Jaha shoves them overboard in order to allow him and Murphy to keep rowing faster. This behavior is so morally troubling that Murphy is freaked out. The two of them reach the shore, and Murphy immediately scrams, saying that he is a survivor and that Jaha's underlings don't have a good survival track record so far. Jaha heads off after another drone, and Murphy heads up the beach toward a lighthouse. At the lighthouse, Murphy discovers a luxurious bunker and plenty of MREs, alcohol, and even solar-powered electricity. He's bopping to some tunes when he accidentally activates the TV, which plays a video of a man in the bunker announcing that an unknown she has acquired the quote-unquote codes. The man commits suicide. The video is dated to the year of the nuclear war. Jaha follows the drone to a huge swarm of other drones, gathered around a luxurious and well-preserved mansion. He enters to find a beautiful and elegant and abnormally clean lady with a melodious but slightly robotic voice. Her name is Allie, and she tells Jaha that she's been waiting for him since he arrived on Earth aboard a nuclear missile. Allie explains she's an artificial intelligence, and she and Jaha have lots of work to do together. End of season. Clark's crucial lever. Obviously, this is the lever that floods Mount Weather with radiation and kills all the Mount Weather people, which I believe is canonically 300 to 400 people. But what's doubly crucial about this lever is that Clark doesn't pull it alone this time. She and Bellamy pull it together, bringing the responsibility for the genocide of the Mountain Men down upon them both. They are bound by something terrible now, but it's also all they've got. The moral of the season. The moral of the season, I think, is very clearly stated in one of the later episodes, right? There are no good guys. Abby says it out loud for us. And Cage says it to Kane in the extraction room when Kane's trying to convince him to let the Ark folks donate the bone marrow instead of getting their bones fucking eviscerated. There's just not enough for everyone in this world. No matter how hard you try to do the right thing, you'll be compromised by life. And Clark learns this lesson the hard way, discovering that her enemies will prove intractable and unreasonable, even in the face of totally sane and mutually agreeable possibilities, like Kane's desperate proposal of marrow donations instead of forcible extraction. There are no good guys in the world of the 100, at least not at this point in the story. Top episodes of the season. Top episodes of this season for me are episode 5, episode 12, episode 13, and the double episode season finale, episodes 15 and 16. Episode 5, titled Human Trials, a lot of great stuff in this episode. Finn and Murphy are out on their pointless quest to save Clark, whom we already know is safe back at Camp Jaha. It's like dramatic irony. It's been delicious since the original premiere of Oedipus Rex, right? And there's this truly visceral dread as you watch Finn work himself up into the massacre at Tandisi. This palpable certainty that of all the people in the show, Murphy is not the one who's capable of preventing Finn from doing this. And when Finn finally does start shooting, there's almost like a terrible catharsis because at least we're not waiting for it to happen anymore. Like, we knew this was coming. We knew he was going to do it, but we've been watching and watching him just work himself into this lather about it till finally he just blows up. This is also the episode where Cage Wallace and Dr. Singh intentionally expose Maya to radiation. There's something so hideous about how casually they're willing to just toss away this sweet girl's life, how they're instantly willing to leverage her sickness to manipulate Jasper into giving his blood so they can experiment on it and decide whether he's producing a delicious enough product for them to want to just suck it all out. The 100 is a great show for pun episode titles, which I haven't mentioned before, but obviously I love. And Human Trials is a great title for this episode because, we got Cage and Singh literally doing medical trials on humans, while Finn, a human, is going through trials in the trials and tribulations sense, and he's also kind of putting the grounders of Tandisi on trial as he threatens their lives for this crime that he imagines that they did. Episode 12, called Rubicon. It's not as thrilling, storyline-wise, minute to minute as Human Trials, but it's awesome in what it sets up for the next few episodes and the series as a whole. This is the episode where Murphy and Omori meet, and that, to me at least, ensures that it is a pivotal installment of the series. As I said earlier in the video, this is the best thing that ever happens to Murphy. And I promise you that knowing only what you know about him now from me, you will not believe where he ends up. By episode 100, we will see him get into heaven. Yes, there are 100 episodes of the show. It was inevitable. Also in this episode, we get the delicious death of Dr. Singh, right? The part where Bellamy floods the facility, just the part of it with the radiation to free the other Ark teens. Singh is there because she was going to drag him to the extraction chamber. She's caught in the radiation, but she doesn't die as soon as the guard. She makes it to the elevator. She thinks she can just close the elevator doors and get to a safe level. But what's this? It's Jasper, Monty, Harper, and Miller with the steel chair. And they stand in the elevator door to keep it from closing and just watch her writhing around on the floor as she liquefies. They repeat back to her condescending line that she said to them earlier, and Rika Sharma really sells this horrific writhing agony and shrieking as her eyeballs boil and her skin peels off. It's fucking classic. This is also the episode where Alexa teaches Clark about sacrificing your followers for the mission when they find out the missile is coming to hit Tandisi. Clark is so surprised when later on this same logic leads Lexa to give her the shaft too. But talking about Lexa giving Clark the shaft is getting ahead of myself. Famously, that's not until next season. Episode 13 is called Resurrection, coming up right on after Rubicon. Kind of gives us the aftermath of Clark and Lexa making the hard decision to leave Tondisi to get blown up by the missile to protect Bellamy's status as the inside man. Plenty of hilarious carnage in this one at the side of Tondisi. I think there is like a flaming horse that runs across screen so that you really get the oh no, even the horses! And Kane and Abby have some great scenes together in the wreckage. Kane makes this point that's so important that Clark does these terrible things, but she's only mimicking what she grew up with. The whole system of sacrifice of others for the good of those you love or your in group, and this realization that they built the model for Clark. And when Clark does things that disturb them, they have to reflect on their own behavior, is like a really important realization for Kane and for Abby. And it will create a lot of tension in their relationship once we get to the cannibal years. Episodes 15 and 16, Blood Must Have Blood, Part 1 and Part 2. Once again, we end the season on a high note, which is something for which I do have to commend this show at large. Part 1 of Blood Must Have Blood, we get to experience the satisfaction of the plan all coming together as our heroes, thanks to their hard-won alliance with Lexa and the Grounders, manage to put Mount Weather on the ropes. Despite the Mount Weatherite superiority in terms of their weapons tech and their fortifications, then it all falls apart thanks to Dante's devious machinations. And the show has done a really good job up to right then of preserving just a little shred of moral rectitude for Dante when he rejects Cage's bone marrow scheme, helps Bellamy irradiate that one level, but when he's driven to this breaking point by a truly existential threat to his people, he comes back around to full villainy. Raymond J. Barry delivers a phenomenal performance in this role. He simultaneously gets these notes of like patriarchal wisdom, uncompromising loyalty to his role as the president and the people of Mount Weather. It's like a coherent character that holds together, but you're never quite confident that you know what he's going to do in any given scene. Part 2 of Blood Must Have Blood delivers our heroes doing what they do best, finding themselves in an impossible situation, slaughtering their way out. Clark and Cage's game of brinkmanship over who will kill more of each other's people is like vastly, hilariously tragic in a way that's like almost a little bit too real, right? With this finale and with last season's, Clark has now killed like more than 600 people personally with just 2 levers. And that's just too much power for one 18-year-old girl to have. Which is why it is very kind of Bellamy to take on this responsibility with her. Of course, he has his own reasons for doing so, like protecting Octavia, who he can see is in danger from the Mount Weatherites right there. I think this scene is important because not only does it bring Clark and Bellamy closer together, but it also starts to highlight what's going to be a key difference between them, which is that while they both take on huge sacrifices to protect people that they love, Clark is willing to take it all, take it alone, and after this season, not even seek absolution anymore. She believes that there are no good guys, so she might as well be the bad guy, right? And Bellamy's not ready to be the bad guy, which is what allows him to forgive himself at the end of the season, especially because he pulled the lever to help Clark and alleviate her suffering, and which is what makes it possible for him to stay at Camp Jaha and not abandon everyone the way Clark does. But also, Bellamy's dislike of being the bad guy is going to direct him to some unwise and ultimately actually bad courses of action in the upcoming seasons. Poor Taste Watch. Number one thing that was in the most poor taste this season: Lincoln's savage drug addict arc. Making the most significant black character besides Jaha undergo an arc where he becomes addicted to drugs, which make him savage and animalistic, and at one point he betrays the other characters to get more drugs, was in poor taste. I hope that I don't need to expound at length about how stereotypes surrounding black people in drugs, black people in violence, black people in quote-unquote savage behavior are all extremely prevalent in Western media culture and have extremely bad implications. This was a poorly thought out and poorly executed storyline. It doesn't really benefit the season at large that much. It doesn't benefit Lincoln as a character. All it does is create an excuse for Lexa to form an alliance with Clark and for Bellamy to get captured at Mount Weather instead of just being able to sneak in. But since the alliance was just based on advanced medical knowledge from the Ark, could have executed that any number of other ways, in my opinion. Ricky Whittle's going to leave the show next season, and I 100% do not blame him. Ultimately, his character is getting bad storylines. Also, it's just kind of a stupid storyline. Like, come on. Even in 2015, I feel like we were done with storylines where characters get over, like, addiction because their love interest yells at them about it. Like, I feel like that shit was hacky when Hill Street Blues was on, and Hill Street Blues was literally, like, the first good TV show. Other thing that was in poor taste, Abby's public electro-flogging that got kind of fetishy. The part where she gets electro-flogged is just, like, a little bit too aestheticized. You know, they have to, like, tear open her shirt to expose her back dramatically, and then we have to like close zoom on Paige Turco like biting her lip and grabbing onto her bonds to endure the terrible pain of the flogging. And then she and Kane have to have a post-mortem about it while her back is still exposed and Jackson is doctoring her. Kane's feeling sorry about it, even though he could have just not ordered it to happen. But, you know, we all experience backslides in our personal growth sometimes. Another thing in poor taste, the weird fetishy gauze clothes that the exsanguination victims wear. All the grounders who get captured by Mount Weather and caged up have to wear this very weird outfit that's like made of gauze and is like the exact midpoint between like a mummy costume and a diaper. And for the women, it obviously also has like this weird like bound bikini top element, but again like made out of gauze. It's just weird. It's just weird. Very much in poor taste also was the giant mutant gorilla. It was dumb as fuck. And I assure you it's never mentioned again in the whole show. Somewhere out there, just in the background of all the rest of the seasons that take place on Earth, like, I need you to remember that there's a giant mutant gorilla that lives in the remains of Rock Creek Park. And it's just cruising along and fucking eating people. And that's like, fine, that's no longer relevant to our characters. Also, in poor taste, in the best way possible, super gory radiation deaths of Singh and Maya and all the other Mount Weatherites. They go out of their way to make it so fucking nasty. The people get covered in horrendous boils and weeping sores, and their skin peels off, and they're all like. It was in good taste, though, that the creators of the show refrained from making us see the actual, like, little children in Mount Weather go down like this, and just let it be implied by our awareness of their existence from earlier episodes. Horrendous needle drops. As I was editing episode 1, I realized we would need a whole section to deal with this show's horrendous needle drops. So today, we'll cover both seasons 1 and 2. Retroactively and obviously, the most horrendous needle drop in season 1 is Radioactive Imagine Dragons. It's so painfully on the nose to use a song called Radioactive in your show about life after a nuclear apocalypse and then, like, drop the beat where they say radioactive right after the characters say, "Oh my god, we have to cross this radioactive forest." Now is also as good a time as any to reveal that watching this show made me realize I didn't really know that Radioactive and Believer were two different songs. Like, even though obviously I had heard both of them 1,000 times because they were fucking inescapable when they came out, even if you weren't watching the CW, in which case they were doubly inescapable, they were pretty much the same song in my mind this whole time, just kind of like fuzzily intermingled, and I'm very sad now that I know that they're two different songs. But the horrendous needle drop of season 2 is the cover of Knockin' on Heaven's Door by Rain, Raign. You let me know how that goes. And I don't know a lot about music, but luckily I have connections in the knowing things industry. And I learned that Knockin' on Heaven's Door was originally a song by Bob Dylan that was in an edgy 70s Western movie by Sam Peckinpah. And the song is about a lawman who's like reaching the end of his life and he's feeling regrets. He's reconsidering his decisions in the face of death. And what I think is so scary about this is that it indicates the creators of this show, The 100, put some serious thought into the horrendous needle drops. Because this song is what plays over Clark telling Bellamy she's not coming home because she feels too guilty about the genocide at Mount Weather. So despite not being an old-timey sheriff or like old, Clark is a lawman filled with regrets about doing what she had to do to bring the carnage to an end. Atrocities so far. We had a fair number of atrocities this season. Abby's electro-flogging It's not Kane's biggest atrocity, because at that time he vented 300 people, but it wasn't classy. It also wasn't smart, since at Camp Jaha they only have the two doctors, Abby and Jackson, right? So I think we'll give it a half as an atrocity. We'll count it as a half atrocity. Finn's massacre of the civilians at Tandisi, obviously an atrocity, murder of innocent civilians, right? Capture and exsanguination of literally uncountable number of grounders by Mount Weather, basically a type of genocide, especially since we know that they also deployed massive amounts of force to ensure a steady supply of captives, and we know that they would kill like entire villages to prevent the grounders from taking up the use of like firearms or anything they could use to resist. So obviously an atrocity. And like follow-on atrocity, the forcible extraction of the Ark folks' bone marrow by Mount Weather, another of their crimes against humanity. Lexa's betrayal that allows the extractions to continue. I'm not saying it's like an atrocity in and of itself, but it was a conscious decision to allow an atrocity to continue because Lexa's well aware what's going to happen to the folks from the Ark without her military support. And she basically just trades the atrocity happening to her people for the atrocity happening to the people from Camp Jaha, right? So we'll give her betrayal a half atrocity. And then, of course, the climactic atrocity, Bellamy and Clark flooding Mount Weather with radiation to kill all the Mount Weatherites. That's this season's big genocide. No denying it's an atrocity. We can argue that it was necessary to save everyone from the Ark, but it was an atrocity. Which is one of the most fucked up things about this show, in my opinion, is the way that it's so willing to entertain these sci-fi ethical questions about, like, what if we absolutely had to do a genocide so that we could stop another genocide? And then unlike a show like, say, Star Trek, they don't write like a goofy out for the characters at the last minute so that we can keep liking them or whatever. They're like, but what if we absolutely had to do a genocide to stop another genocide? And like, we had to do it.
Oh, yeah. And then one last atrocity when Jaha dumps those red shirts into the sea to feed him to the sea monster so he can keep going after Allie's drone. We know that's an atrocity because even Murphy balks at the like line of moral indefensibility we've now crossed.
I think that's 6 atrocities for this season and 6 atrocities last season. So, season 2, we're hitting a total of 12 atrocities for the show so far. And we've just started rolling, don't worry. Apocalypses so far. The genocide at Mount Weather is the death of a world in that it is the total destruction of like a people and a way of life, if not like a geographical destruction or like the end of all people. So I'm willing to give it a half apocalypse, which brings us to 1 and 1/2 apocalypses so far in the show. The original nuclear war, and then the half apocalypse of the destruction of all the Mount Weatherites. And trust me, there will be more. Season rating. I would rate this season 85 out of 100 possible teen convicts dropped from space. It's a much better season to me than the first one. Not without its flaws. I find that the 16 episode seasons of this show are like just a little bit too long in general. A bit more filler here than I personally need. Like Bellamy is loose in Mount Weather for way longer than makes sense. Lincoln gets addicted to red drug and then gets over it twice, right? But it's not the worst thing in the world to have lots of room to breathe, right? Because it gives us time for weird boondoggles like Murphy and Jaha in the desert, which doesn't pay off until the final moments of the final episode. In this season, we also suffer still under the curse of all our best girls being yoked to absolutely mediocre or bland love interests. Though we are closer to solving that problem because Finn dies this season, Wick's actor leaves in between seasons so he doesn't come back next season, and we know, because I already said it once, that Ricky Whittle's leaving next season too, so Lincoln's on his way out also. We are also seeing the first hints of an era of the show in which the plot lines and characters end up being so geographically disparate that tracking their connections becomes kind of brain stretching and confusing. This isn't negative per se to me because I kind of love the thrill of bafflement in my like binge watching television practice. But I know that this is a lot for people, especially people who want to like just veg out to a dumb CW show, to which I suggest probably this is not the right CW show for you. But overall, this season kind of rules. There's just so much material here, right? Like the whole Mount Weather scenario. Because one of the things that this show is great about, like to the point where it becomes heavy-handed sometimes, is it putting up mirrors and foils and parallels between our heroes and their enemies. Mount Weather is a perfect example of that. On the Ark, we did whatever we had to do to enforce order and preserve what we believe to be the last vestiges of humanity, up to and including enforcing the dumbest laws and floating our friends and family if they broke them. So in Mount Weather, we see that kind of thought process taken to like its logical extreme. Because if our own people are disposable when they no longer serve a purpose, then people who are not ours are worth even less. The Grounders, well, they're hardly human, aren't they? They know nothing about Starry Night or JFK or Beethoven's Fifth, so they're basically meat. And even the Ark folks who are more culturally aligned with the inhabitants of Mount Weather become disposable too once their bodies are found to be more valuable than their personhood. And Dante Wallace is this perfect foil for Clark. Dante and Clark are both intensely principled, they're both the sensitive, artistic souls, and they're both the person who their people look to make the hard decisions. Even if Kane or Abby is technically the Chancellor, neither of them is the kind of figure that Clark is, this leader who knows about the ground, who has already survived it, and has the experience to make these decisions. And Dante and Clark always make the same decisions for the same reason. And because Dante is on one side, Clark is on the other, their decisions are at cross purposes. They cancel each other out, and they bring about this horrific final bloodshed. We're on Clark's side because she's the character that the show is about. We came to Earth with her, not because she's necessarily always in the right. Although, obviously, in this case, she was in the right, because while she did do a genocide, she was not literally stealing people's bone marrow. It's also great in this season to discover more about the Grounders. They were the mooks and the bad guys last season, but here we begin to get some depth of personhood from some of them. Lexa, especially Indra. Indra doesn't really get anything close to her due as a character till season 5, if not season 7, but throughout the show she does remain this pillar of certainty and principle to a degree that our heroes will wish they could aspire to. We get to hear a fair amount of Tregeta slang during this season. I think season 2 is when they hire the Dothraki guy from Game of Thrones to make the whole language for them, and he gives them plenty to use, and they do a lot with it. The writers never forget about Tregeta slang all the way through season 7, and I appreciate that. And we start to learn some of the most important phrases this season that recur throughout the series. Most importantly, besides juice drain, juice down, is what the Grounders say when someone dies. You complex de odon, which literally means your fight is over. And this is like a sharp contrast between what the Ark folks say, right? May we meet again. So we see already this cultural ideological difference down to just the death practices and the statements they make at the end of your life. With the two threads of the Mount Weather and the expanded knowledge of the Grounders, we can also finally start to say things with the show's setting and context, specifically the themes of colonialism that are inevitably evoked by its setting in the U.S. Capital Region, which, as far as I can tell, is not something the book series dealt with, even though it was still set in the DC area. But also, I do not intend to ever read the book series. I don't think that Dante, who sits all day in a glass box office marked with the crest of the Department of Homeland Security, surrounded by the most potent symbols of American presidential power, ever says it out loud. But to me, it's obvious that the core of Mount Weather's extractive violence against the Grounders is their belief that the Grounders are a less valuable culture. Mount Weather preserves traditional, quote unquote, American culture, preserves, you could argue, Western culture, with its vaults of paintings like Starry Night and its nattily dressed and cheerful, waspy looking inhabitants. For the last 100 years or whatever, it's been like one long Lutheran church social down there, as far as we know. And so life on the ground in this region has set into this cruel equilibrium. The Grounders living in perpetual fear of the seemingly demonic Mount Weatherites appearing to drag them off to a slow and horrific death. The Mount Weatherites living in comfort and abundance but denied the freedom of life above the ground. And then our heroes fall from the sky. I've often wondered if it was weird for the actors who play Clark and Bellamy to work through this story about colonists who are also convicts being abandoned in an unknown land while also both being Australian in real life. But either way, there's something that really gets me about how our heroes, not even necessarily intending violence, I mean, Murphy probably was, but not all of them, Our heroes arrive on Earth and immediately have this ruinous effect on the balance of power. Their appearance interrupts and eventually ends Mount Weather's grounder harvesting ways, sure, but at first it sends the whole equilibrium spiraling into, for a while, like three-way warfare. And this is going to happen over and over and over. Our heroes don't want to hurt anyone most of the time, but no matter where they go, death follows because they're outsiders, which begs the question, can we humans ever enter like a new world, new region, new culture, even like friend group without rupturing it? Is difference inherently destructive? I'd like to believe no, but I don't know. And I have to put still a lot of thought into what the final conclusion of this show is about that. And besides all this heavy shit, there's a lot of like goopy, gory fun to be had throughout this season, right? Like there's the teens' guerrilla war inside Mount Weather, Clark and Lexa having repeated girl boss offs, Clark's endless moral torments over to kill or not to kill, that is the question. Octavia's decision to make herself a grounder rather than an archer, and her battle for acceptance. I think that this season is when the Octavia character began to grow on me a little bit, after I was kind of unmoved by her in the first season, and she only gets better and better as the seasons go on. There's Murphy and Jaha's big adventure across the desert and over the sea, which sets us up for next season with this huge question. Who is this fancy AI lady? What does she want? And with that, we have a wrap on the 100, Season 2, the Blood Must Have Blood season. This is your Ween, signing off. May we meet again.
Mama put my guns in the ground.